I think we're waiting to be published. All right, Mr. Russman, take it away.
All right. Good morning. Good morning. It's a beautiful Sunday. Uh, we are here at the Duke postgame report brought to you by Relive Sports. We got a full lineup of commentators here today. As usual, I am Eric Russman. With us today is Ritz and Justin. And joining us today with us to create the quad here is the D'Artagnan to this Three Musketeers. Franny Martinovich is in the house. Yeah, so we got the full group here. You've got some Athos, Aramis, and Porthos with our new D'Artagnan.
Three Musketeers, probably one of my favorite candy
that was
bars
good.
as a
That was
kid.
good.
One for one, one for all, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They do have that sort of French flair, right? Because the original Blue Devils were of what, the French airmen, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so,
Mhm.
okay. Yeah, something like that. That's a beautiful way to start the morning. Happy Sunday, everybody.
I do apologize. I did have a good one that was three. It was going to be a Bermuda Triangle reference, and I had the geographic locations all done. And I was going to make the transition to March Madness of like, speaking of like mysterious and chaotic things, we're going to be talking about, which we are today, March Madness, the game last night against UNC, and then also some unveiling the mysteriousness of how teams get seeded in the tournament.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that was my go-to, but
Happy International Women's Day, by the way,
Yes.
to all the women out
Yes.
there. There's plenty of women in our lives, girlfriends, mothers,
Mhm.
grandparents, of course. Duke forever. Yes, Duke, go Duke Blue. Quick shout out to ChalkFan91 for the sub on YouTube and the follow on Twitch. The whole squad is here. Great time to crack in. Oh man! All right, so we had a very good game last night. One of our favorites. It was Duke UNC. It was number 2, the second round. Senior night here. Senior night in Cameron for Javin, Jack White, and Justin Robinson. And of all these folks, Justin Robinson with one heck of a game last night. The tip-off there from Javin to his fellow senior Jack White, and we're going to get things started over here with Justin Robinson in the corner. The bank is open on senior night, getting the 3 there, and now Goldwire going baseline here on Leaky Black. Gets it to Trey Jones for 3. Once again, the 3s going early and often. Cole Anthony actually didn't have that much of a game except for that one, but the joke's on him because Cassius Stanley is on the other side of the floor. Why not? And now he's trying to steal the spotlight. Look, he's apparently being interviewed because he thinks that Carolina's a top 10 team or some crap like that. And except it's Vernon Carey that's going to slam it home on his head on that end of the floor. Extra pass here to Robinson again. Yes, for 3. Duke out early to an early lead, but North Carolina was going to keep this thing close, give some love to the senior on senior night, Javin DeLaurier down low, and how about the freshman? Don't forget about him because Carolina seemed to on that play. Cassius Stanley with the finish, now Wendell Moore. Oh, this is going to be a good one. Wendell with a fireball pass. What a beautiful, that looks like the Zion ones from last year. Carey there with the beautiful left-handed floater. Great awareness to not draw a charge, and instead he gets the, that's an air ball on this one. And here is the Roy Williams tie, and clearly not happy with his tie selection, and the crazies are going to let them hear the airball chant for the rest of the night. Trey Jones, one more step, would have had that one to go, but Duke by 8 at the halftime. Off this Garrison Brooks little turnaround hook shot there. UNC is going to pull within 1. What do? We go right back to Justin Robinson, because he's going to get that one to go in for 3. And Cassius Stanley here in the corner. It's a quick 6-0 run for the Blue Devils. And then it's going to be Carey slipping the screen. Trey Jones to Vernon Carey down low, and Vernon Carey going to finish right here. Actually, not going to finish. Correction, that is Baycott's 4th foul. So now the game plan becomes really easy for the Blue Devils because it's just go feed the beast. Feed Vernon Carey down low. Carey gets that 2 to go. Now he's going to shoot a 3. I have no idea why he's shooting a 3. That is not the shot we want. This is the shot we want. He still can't break this bizarre little habit of pump faking down low, but we're going to figure that out at some point in this season. and Vernon Carey going to finish again. 3 straight ones to Vernon Carey is going to make it basically going to stretch the Blue Devil lead until Robinson is going to get that 3 to go, and Cassius Stanley once again from the corner. These two made a dynamic duo last night. And again, get out the brooms, ladies and gentlemen, because Robinson is going to start swatting UNC away. It looks like a freaking block drill on that one, and Duke is going to take this by 13 points here at the end. A beautiful win for our Blue Devils here in Cameron on senior night, no less. Gentlemen, good performance here by the Blue Devils.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I mean it was unbelievable. I was watching with like the Duke Club of Chicago, kind of like at a meetup at a bar, and I was talking with a lot of my friends, and it was weird. Like after the first 5 minutes of the game, where we came out strong, in the initial like 3 minutes of that, and then Carolina was kind of like right on our tails. They kind of caught back up. But, compared to the other first 5 minutes of our typical games, I considered that like a strong start for us.
Mm-hmm.
It was great to see us come out at home. And that's a huge advantage, especially at home, get the Cameron Crazies in it right away. And I just think we kind of kept that pace up the whole game. I mean, we shot lights out.
Mm.
We were running on them. I think our
Mm-hmm.
fast break points, and we had like 19 fast break points.
Yep.
Other than giving the thing that kept Carolina in it was, we gave them a lot of second chance points that they were able to finish. But yeah, we shot lights out, 3-point line and the free throw line. Unbelievable. I mean, we were 29 of 33 for the free throw line.
Mm-hmm.
Trey Jones, 10 for 10. Verdi Carey, like our setter, 9 for 11. Like, I mean, everything was just firing full cylinders, and just J-Rob was just the absolute spark. And I mean, just provided so much energy and leadership to that team.
Oh yeah, huge. It was interesting because we used a typical Carolina style of play. Carolina style of play is run as fast as you can on every single possession. And we took it to them, and they had absolutely no idea that was coming. Eventually they settled into the game, and they were able to use their size with Brooks and Baycott to get second chance points. And it seemed like we weren't interested in trying to defend the glass that much, which was kind of surprising. And then there was that little in between where Carey had, I think, 3 or 4 in a row where he pump faked multiple times and then wasn't getting these little sitters to go. But then we made some changes. We kept driving inside. Trey Jones, I think there was a report that he literally looked at Carey in a timeout and was like, "Go up. I'm getting you the ball. Go up." And then he scored 3 or 4 on 3 or 4 straight possessions. And so we were able to make adjustments and keep playing really, really strong and attack them. When you attack them, Baycott gets 4 fouls, and then it opens the game up. So we had a great game plan, and we executed said game plan, which was really fun to see.
Mm-hmm.
So, question from chat. Do you guys think that this level of play, well, one, I'll sort of break this question down into 2. Is this finally a Duke team that we're happy to see, and do we think that the play will carry over into the ACC tournament in the NCAA?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely happy to see this style of play. I mean, that's kind of like the team that I imagine that this team could be, and the level that they could play at. Hopefully it carries over. I think I did see a quote from like Coach K that from like in the post game stuff that he'd said like, "Oh, we actually played better than like we've been practicing this week." So maybe it was just like a little bit of a surge just from the getting fired up and playing against UNC. But I mean, that just means that, come big matchups, potentially in the ACC tournament and in the NCAA tournament, that will also rise to occasion like that. So I like that effort shows up when we need it to.
Mm-hmm.
Fran, you say this is lineup.
Yeah, I think one of the main things that we're starting to see here, I think Coach K has kind of finally found his spark in the way how he can actually get offense on the board. One of the things that on the stream yesterday we were talking about is when they run the horn set and have Robinson in there as well with Carey. That typically a lot of this offense was really just run with Jack White and Delorier, and both of them can't actually like spread the floor and hit the 3 or take someone off the dribble. And having Robinson out there being able to hit the 3 and not hesitant to shoot it completely changes how you have to play defense when you're switching between Carey and Robinson, especially with Trey Jones there in the pick and roll. So I think that has kind of completely been a new thing for Duke, and also what Robinson as on the defensive end and as a leadership, I think that's completely changed how this Duke team kind of operates and plays.
Yeah, we were. I wanted to add that we were also able to like execute a game plan, defensively that Coach K tried to pull off. And one major thing that we did, especially like you were alluding to, like the typical UNC style of play, we did an excellent job in this game of making sure that we got back on every possession at the end. And as Coach K pointed out, he actually said, like, at the expense intentionally sometimes of giving up chances to get offensive rebounds, but it was more important to get back. Because sometimes if you send it, like, 3 guys in flying for rebounds, you're exposed if they can run on you real quick. So we got back, and a lot of times it involved maybe some guys like not taking, like, they had to pick up a different guy than they would typically be guarding in like a half court set. But we handled that extremely well.
I think one thing also that needs to be mentioned as well is kind of just the effort level that was being put in. I think we also mentioned it yesterday. Every single time we got the ball or got a defensive rebound, I mean, Carey was already down the court. He was running the floor, and that changes a lot. I mean, that was at least like 6 to 8 fast break points just from him wanting to run the floor and put in the effort. And I think when you see that level of effort being put in, it completely changes how we play. Hopefully, as to answer the question, I think it will carry over. If it does, we will be in a good spot in the ACC and the NCAA.
Yeah, so the other comment here is that if we continue to shoot well from the 3-point line, I mean, basically this, to your point, Fran, you now have a big who can spread the floor as well in Robinson. So yesterday, the shooting, 47% overall, 47.6% from the 3-point line. And Eric, to your point earlier, 88% from the free throw line. Jesus,
finally,
John Shire finally got to them.
Vintage Duke right there. Vintage.
Whatever. John Shire finally got to them. Thank you, Lord. So, curious though, we see this from Duke teams in the past where Coach K likes to experiment with a bunch of different lineups earlier in the season. A lot of people get playing time, and now the lineup has shrunk considerably. The PT for Hurt, Baker, and O'Connell, and White, it was senior night, but if it wasn't senior night, I would throw White in there, is close to non-existent. Are we back to like a 6-man rotation here?
Maybe a little bit. I think Jav is still going to get some decent minutes, especially if Vern's in foul trouble. So that's going to play a factor. And I think if we need a big defensive stop and J-Rob's not successful on the offensive end and he's not providing that dimension, or the other team is purposefully trying to take him out and make us play through either Trey or Vern, I think then we may have to make some adjustments and either bring Matthew Hurt back on or maybe O'Connell or Baker. I don't really know what's going on with that, but you're still going to see Jack White get some minutes. Jav is definitely going to get 10 to 15. Jav's going to get his minutes. I think Matt Hurt is still going to get some minutes. It's just how effective can he be? J-Rob's playing right now like what we want from Matt Hurt, if you really think about it.
Well, that's kind of the question that was just posed, is how can Coach K implement Hurt as a scorer, even though he's sort of a defensive liability? And Fran, you've called this out in multiple games as you've casted now. I mean, it looks like every time Hurt's on the floor, the other team is just trying to exploit that matchup.
Yeah, and I think one of the main things is why you're going to see Coach K, maybe Duke in the future, just kind of come down to a smaller lineup is because of us on the defensive end. If you saw us yesterday, that was probably one of our best defensive games that we've actually ever played with this lineup. When you add in Matthew Hurt and you add in Alex O'Connell, that defense typically breaks down a little bit. We've even seen it and called that out a few times. We're like, did he think he had help there or something? Like, why did he just let him blow right past? And those are things that you didn't see happen with this lineup out the floor.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't happen with Robinson, who either just swats everything away or as a senior basically has the ability, like he's played in this. It's beautiful to see a player who's gone through the system for 4 years, like finally show up on the court and you're like, I know everything. Like I know exactly what I'm doing here. And like
walk on.
Actually, the crazy stat was that Robinson as the walk on with 13 points had more points than Cole Anthony, 9. Who's apparently supposed to be some sort of lottery pick. I don't know. But that's the Trey Jones Defensive Player of the Year effort going on Cole Anthony, holding him to 4 of 14 shooting and 9 points. Pretty nuts.
3 turnovers.
I mean, we definitely, executed a game plan to shut him down. I mean, basically, what was Briggs? Was the guy that was just eating us up on Brooks. Sorry.
Brooks got hit.
Yeah, we basically put like the game, like he had to try to like win that game for UNC, which is good. I mean, you focus on taking certain tools away from them, and you make the other guy step up, and if they don't, then you win. So I mean, I think that was the thing. We were in control of that game. Like I mean, most of the whole time. What the closest they got was within one for like a couple minutes, or a minute, and then we just were ahead the whole time.
All right, so all in all, a good win. We have a packed show, so we're going to try to move through this quickly. We want to get to the other segments because they're like really good. We're really excited for this. So the tickets that were punched yesterday, 2 tickets punched the NCAA tournament. One by Belmont, who won on a nice little tricky play. Unfortunately, I don't actually have a highlight of it because ESPN is terrible. Actually, wait a sec.
I sent you the Yahoo.
Oh, but it didn't have anything. Oh,
no.
Right.
In it is a tweet. In it is a tweet with the video. It was a cheeky backdoor cut.
It was
cheeky backdoor cut with like 5 seconds left to win the game.
All right, fair enough. But we actually, Fran, you pointed this one out to me yesterday. I'm actually going to. We're not going to move on. We're going to talk about this, Fran. This was the sellers from. This is the Make-A-Wish yesterday. Justin, I think you knew some about this.
Yeah, so Antonio Sellers, hopefully everybody can hear me.
Yeah.
Antonio Sellers was a high school basketball player up in New Jersey who out of nowhere started dealing with severe headaches that just kept getting worse and worse, and he was diagnosed with brain tumors. And so he's been going through treatment for brain tumors, and as you can see, it's left him almost permanently affected. And the Make-A-Wish Foundation was able to step in and give him his wish of coming to see a Duke UNC game. So he spent the entire week with the team. You see he's got the Brotherhood shirt on, and at the pep rally the night before the game, Coach K introduced him as the newest member of the Brotherhood. And you see everybody rallying around him, which is just amazing. And this is something that I think Duke just stands out against most other programs. Not most other programs are doing these types of things. So thank you for joining the Brotherhood, Antonio.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then he was also interviewed the night before when somebody asked him, who do you think is going to win? And he was like, I'm pretty sure Duke's going to kill them. And he was absolutely right. So, yeah, he's like, yeah, Duke's going to kill them. So we love to see it. And this is a great little moment here being shared with the crazes in the team. So,
yeah, great for him.
That's
absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah.
All right, now we will move on with our programming. We had to get that one in for sure. All right, so this was the San Diego State. This was the San Diego State one, as Utah State rather is going to steal the bid here at the buzzer in the Mountain West Conference. The three-pointer in the guy's face. Oh, my goodness. Sam Merrill from Utah State. Utah State, Justin, a team that was on the bubble, outside looking in, punches their ticket to the NCAA tournament with that three-point shot. Impressive here. Good defense, just better offense. I mean.
Oh, yeah.
And this is like, welcome. And then San Diego State does have a final crack at it here. Unfortunately, that shot looks like the Gordon Hayward one from a couple of years ago, from a decade ago now at this point, and not going to go, however. So Utah State is into the NCAA tournament, perhaps a bid steal, given the Mountain West was probably a one bid conference, Justin?
It was going to be a one bid conference. It was going to be San Diego State.
It was going to be San Diego State, and this potentially also knocks San Diego State off the one line. So, and then the Belmont one, we're just gonna roll into the next segment. The Belmont one is also, they have punched their ticket. Not technically a bid steal, since I think that was a one bid conference anyway. So it just whoever ended up going to win that one is going to take it. So, Justin.
Yes.
Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our special segment here. We are, if I have this done correctly, we're just gonna set this up. And
also,
then,
Hoopstrike, thank you for the host. Appreciate it.
Oh, nice. We're gonna do. There's that. Okay, we have this set up correctly. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So this is the segment you have all been waiting for. This is the exciting piece, and I'm so okay. So invite all your friends because here we go.
Yes.
Everyone, there's been a lot of questions, and especially from us here on the show. Now that we are in March, how exactly does seeding work in the NCAA tournament? It's a big, huge math equation, and at times it looks like literally the NCAA committee is just picking teams out of a hat, and then they reveal a bracket, and you're like, well, what the hell was that? So, in an attempt to try to demystify the whole scenario, we are going to break down for you exactly how the NCAA tournament evaluates teams, and then when it comes to Selection Sunday next week, how they build the bracket. So, Justin, you've
Yes.
done the majority of the research here.
Yes.
I'm going to be taking notes, and you are
Okay.
going to educate us all on exactly how this works.
Okay, excellent. So we just have to backpedal a couple years. What we used to use and what most people have become familiar with hearing is the RPI score, which essentially was what the selection committee was using, and that stands for rating percentage index. And all it was just a one score that took your team's winning percentage, the winning percentage of your opponents, and then the winning percentage of your opponent's opponents. And they weighted them a little differently. They multiplied them out and they get a score. And that was essentially how good you were. And the selection committee would use that score to rank teams 1 through 60, 68 now. However, in 2017 or right before 2017, they added in these things called quadrants, which was to objectify your wins a little bit more. And so the quadrants rank teams based on previously on the RPI, and then each quadrant has a certain weight based on if the game was home, neutral, or away. So, for example, a quadrant 1 win. So, you've probably heard Seth Greenberg and some of those guys on ESPN talk about these things and look at the resumes of teams. A quadrant 1 win is if your opponent on a home game, if your opponent is ranked 1 through 30, that's a quadrant 1 win. If you play on a neutral site, if your opponent is ranked 1 through 50, or if you go away to a true road game, if your opponent is ranked 1 through 75. So that's how they kind of stagger based on giving more weight to neutral site games and to away games. And so we've got a little graphic for you guys here. And this just breaks down. Ritz is bringing it up. It'll show you how the quadrants are broken down. Now, start of last year is when the committee introduced a new stat to take over for the RPI, because the RPI didn't really tell you anything. It didn't tell you how well you won. It didn't factor in road games or various different things. But now they've got a new stat which they use to rank teams. So here you have the quadrant definitions, and you get different point levels based on if it's a quadrant 1 win or a quadrant 1 loss, all the way to the worst, which is a quadrant 4 loss. You don't want those. You don't want quad 4 losses. Kentucky has one. And so, for example, just giving an example of this one team from this year. So the number 1 team right now, Kansas, they have 12 quad 1 wins. And then if you multiply it out, it ends up being 48. So they got plus 4 for each win, and they have 3 quad 1 losses, and so they only get -3. So then the committee adds all these points up and they divide them, and then you get a quad score. And so if you look at go down to the net, to the big graphic.
Oh, yep. We're actually gonna just do this. It's up.
It's up. Perfect. So now the NCAA decided to get rid of the RPI. And they made a formula. They used Google to help, and they used machine learning and all this other fancy stat stuff to essentially have one tool that they're going to use to rank teams. So you probably have heard people talk about the net, which is the NCAA evaluation tool ranking. And it's ranked in different weights. So you have number 1, which is your team value index. And this is based on essentially the quadrants. So the games that you play, who you play, where they are, and if you win. So that's your quadrants and your quad score. Then you have your efficiency ratings, which they define here in the graphic. So for offense, your attempts minus your offensive rebounds, add in your turnovers, and then you get a percentage of your free throws. And then you divide it out and you get your offensive efficiency and you subtract it from your defensive. Just straight winning percentage is calculated in. And then they adjust the winning percentage based on if it was a road game, neutral, or a home. Less points for a home win, more points for a true road win. Just a +1 for the neutral. And then they look at scoring margin, so how much you beat the other team by, except they cap it. And this is where I've kind of dove into it a little bit more. They cap the games at 10 points. So you could beat a team by 20. It doesn't matter. You're only going to get a 10-point booster. But if you go to overtime, you could still win by 10 points, but it doesn't matter. They're only going to give you a 1-point booster for all overtime games. Other things that the net doesn't really take into consideration is when the game was played, so early versus late season. And it also doesn't really take into account essentially how hot the team is and or if they did. It's kind of weird because it's weighted the same for if you beat the number 1 team at home versus beating the 75th ranked team away. Those are weighted the same. And it doesn't matter when you beat them, whether it's early in the season or late in the season. But this is a tool that is updated and calculated daily. So every game does matter. And as we've just been perusing through things, if Duke played Clemson, and we have an example, so the Clemson loss, when we originally looked at it a couple days ago, that was rated as a quad 1 away game. But now, after Clemson's lost a few games, their net ranking has updated and they're worse. And now that is a quad 2 loss for us. So it does change.
Yeah, so
your teams
here
play.
In a second. This one is, it's kind of hard to see. Duke. So what Justin is explaining is that here, this is March 7th. This is current as of yesterday's. This is current as of yesterday's games. Clemson here is now in quad 2 as a loss. But if you go back to the team sheets that do all this math, they would have been in quad 1. So basically, I'll scroll down. They're going to be in quad 1. So teams update. So your position in the net moves as things around you change, basically, which is why this gets a little bit bizarre.
Yes, it's very bizarre because you played a team when they were rated at a quad 1 game, but a couple weeks later, or a few days later, that could change based on how that team does and how other teams do in relation. So it's something that's in constant flux, why the early net rankings really don't matter all that much up until you get to about the February time where things are a little bit more solidified. But even then, there's still a lot of volatility.
And here's another example.
Yeah, go for it.
The other example is if you go back to February, this is Duke's team sheet from February. You have Wofford down here as a quad 3 win down at 145. And then you fast forward now to March, and they're actually, on March 1st, they were a quad 4 win. So they actually give us fewer points to help us out. Then come back to yesterday, they're back in the quad 3. So they're flipping quadrants constantly here.
It's very volatile. It factors in a lot. There's been a lot of coaches that have been talking about it. It really matters who you play. That's why the early season non-conference games seem so important now, because your schedules in conference is only going to be what it is. And teams like Virginia Tech, Syracuse, they're going to get beat up on. Clemson as well, they're going to get beat up on, and they're going to be in flux. Versus if you play a lot of non-conference games against the Kansases, against Michigan State, some of the bigger schools that aren't really going to have much volatility to their net scores. So then you get max points for playing and winning those games.
Yeah, look at Kansas here. Their their sheet is ridiculous. This
Yeah.
is why Kansas is going to be the #1 overall seed, and it's not even close.
No.
Dayton, Duke, well, that was a loss, but BYU up here with a win. Villanova, a slight loss there, but it's a quad 1 loss, so it really doesn't hurt them all that much. Texas Tech, they got a quad 1 win against Stanford, and then they have their conference wins as well. Their conference is actually kind of helping them here in the sense that the Big 12 is really strong this year. So a lot of their wins against fellow Big 12 schools are going in these top quadrants. If you look at Duke, our conference is not really helping us here.
No.
Look at all our wins. Virginia Tech, North Carolina, Miami, Wake Forest, Pittsburgh. That's not Boston College twice. Like the ACC is piling into this quad 3, which really isn't helping us.
No, and if this were we'll say a normal year in the ACC, the majority of those games are shifted to the left in quad 1 and 2. So North Carolina didn't help us out this year by being horrific. So that was a quad 2 win away versus a quad 3 win at home, when normally that's a quad 1 game always with UNC. Even Virginia Tech last year, Virginia Tech's games I believe were quad 1s because they were ranked in the top 16 in the net, versus this year it's a quad 3 game. So our conference is definitely down according to how the NCAA evaluates teams. So again, that's the benchmark there. But other things that you really lose out on, I think, with the net is when you really beat a good opponent. And I mean, you beat them bad. So let's take NC State's 22-point drubbing of us. That does count for a quad 1 win for them. But really, like, that's a huge resume building quad 1 win. And they're only going to get the same amount of points as if they beat the 75th ranked team away by 10 points. And to me, those two things aren't the same. And that's my opinion. I'd love to know what chat's thinking. And there's other ways that they do get kickers and points, but it's not a perfect tool. And I'm starting to, as I dive into it more, seeing some of the inconsistencies and where some teams are favored a little bit more. Texas Tech is down in the 20s, but they've only got 3 quad 1 wins versus 10 quad 1 losses. But they're still in the top 25 in the net, and they've got 13 losses on the season. So they're losing mostly quad 1 games, and so you're really not punished for playing a lot of quad 1 teams, versus if you play a lot of quad 3, quad 4 teams, you're really not gaining anything. So it's very biased towards you need to play a strong schedule and a strong schedule only. You could lose a lot of games, but that's okay as long as you play a strong schedule.
So that brings me to this bizarre scenario. This is worth talking about. Gonzaga and San Diego State.
Yep.
By this metric and looking at, now remember chat, so the net, the quadrants are a piece of the net, right? They're actually the biggest piece of that team evaluation index. And if anybody's asking like, well, how do you actually calculate the team evaluation index portion? All it says is opponent, location, and result, right? There is some bizarre math formula that I have not been able to figure out. And actually, the NCAA committee has not released it, so it is quote unquote a secret formula as to exactly how the numbers play out and what the final number is that spits out the overall net rating. So to be clear, the quadrant wins and losses are a component to the net, but the net then affects how the quadrant win and losses play out, right? Yep. Based on who you win. So they are like circular in a bizarre way. But just to make sure that everybody's with us and understands, the quadrant, when we're talking about, someone has a high quadrant wins, they're based on the net ranking, and whether you win or lose goes up and makes your net ranking go up or down. All right. So, okay. So the Gonzaga sheet here.
Yes.
This is Gonzaga's sheet. they're somehow ranked in the net 2, and yet I'm going to bring the pen out here because like all their wins are in this 3rd and 4th. They're 20-0 against 3 and 4, and like who cares?
It's again, and that's where I don't know, because we don't know exactly how this stuff is calculated. But when you look at the top left average net win, so that's the average rank of the teams they beat is 162. That's obviously not a tournament team by any stretch of the imagination, but their average net loss is 17, which is really good. So if you're going to have an average net loss, you want that to be as low as possible. Theirs is pretty low. Again, there's other metrics that the net doesn't factor in, but the committee will still review. And if you look up at the top, there's KPI, SOR. SOR is strength of record. That's an ESPN metric. The BPI, the Basketball Power Index, those are ESPN metrics as well. The tournament committee does factor those in a little bit when they are comparing teams that are pretty close. And so when you calculate it all out, somehow this schedule and this resume right here they do enough that they get a net ranking of 2 despite 20 wins in quad 3, quad 4 versus 5, 9 wins.
Yeah.
Which is it's very unbalanced. So that's where is it really Gonzaga's fault? No, because they did what they could in terms of non-conference games. Oregon, Arizona, Michigan, Washington. So they're playing hard teams, but is this really the schedule of the second ranked team in the nation? I don't know. I don't think so, in my opinion.
This is bizarre. And then the Dayton one, I think the Dayton one holds water. This
it
one,
does.
Looking at Dayton, they're heavy on this quad 2-1 impressively, and they actually had some quad 1 wins. Look, friend, Richmond is in here as a quad 1 win.
Hey.
for
wow,
Dayton.
That's weird.
Yeah. They're ranked 37th overall, actually. And I think they're still in the last 4 in at the moment. But look, they got 8-0 here. Actually, the A10 looks to be pretty strong in quad 2.
Yeah, they do.
The one that was not holding water for me either was this is the San Diego State resume, which looks very similar to the Gonzaga one. And why we say that their loss yesterday probably knocks them off the 1 line. So again, a strength of schedule actually stronger than Gonzaga's in Division One. Here, this 97 and the 135, but pretty similar net win and net loss.
Yeah. So it's again, this is not a perfect tool. It is better than the RPI because it does factor in more things that actually tell you how well the team is doing. But there is a lot of room for improvement and room to tweak it. Now, the thing to remember is the net ranking doesn't, when the selection committee goes in on Saturday night into Sunday and they're going to determine the bracket, it's not just the net ranking transferred over into a bracket.
Right.
And that's the next piece of it. So the committee will take the net rankings once everything is said and done, so final resumes, and they'll use those team sheets. So those team sheets are publicly available on the NCAA's website. And they will take them and they'll create what they call the S curve, which I think is just the seeding curve. And we have an example from last year where we took what the final net rankings were and then what the S curve looked like. So the S curve was the seeding list that the tournament committee used to put into the bracket. And then you have on the right here, you have the net rankings after all the championship games. So we were actually the 3rd ranked net team. However, we were the number 1 overall seed. Why? That doesn't make sense. If the net ranking is supposed to be this thing, it doesn't make sense. However, that's where the subjectivity of the committee comes in. It's unfortunately not a perfect science. The committee has the ability to move teams 1, 2, 3 spots on their S curve away from their net ranking if they feel there is merit. So in last year's example, our net 3 ranking was mostly because we lost a few games when Zion was out. Zion comes back. We run the table in the ACC tournament. We're super hot right now. Zion's the best player in the NCAA. So that held weight with the committee. And the committee said, well, you know what? Duke's the best team. They're the most talented team. They're going number one. While Virginia is going to drop to the 2 line. And then the same thing you see here. What was interesting in the seed list, North Carolina was 3rd, but their net ranking had them at 7. And so the committee felt that compared to the other teams ahead of them, UNC was better and had some other metrics that back that up, and they bumped them up. So that's the subjectivity of the committee weighing in. And so we even looked at it a little bit more to make sure that we were getting a fair shake, because we did not like our bracket last year.
Yes.
And we were very vocal about that, of how we got Michigan State, which per the seed list was the 2nd ranked number 2 seed. So we should have, per the seed list, we should have got Michigan. However, per the net ranking, if you look at us as 3, if that held true, we should have gotten Kentucky.
Yeah.
And so, again, this is where biases and various different things, people putting more weight on different metrics like strength of record, BPI, or just some head-to-head matchups. Next thing you know, there's this bracket that came out of it that really is designed for storylines and matchups and to put people in the appropriate region. So there's less travel that does factor into things. And so, again, it's not a perfect science, but it's good to understand what at least the committee's using. So they're taking the net rankings and a couple other metrics like strength of record, BPI, strength of schedule, and then they're using it to create this S curve or this seed list. And that's where the bias and the eye test and the subjectivity comes in from the committee.
And Justin, the BPI is what?
The Basketball Power Index. That is an ESPN derived metric, and it's used best to predict games in terms of if one team has a better BPI, they're predicted to beat a team with a lesser BPI because they normalize it to the average. Essentially, they compare that team to the average NCAA team, basketball team. And so each one is normalized to that same team. So then they can say, okay, well, this team was going to do better against them, so they have a higher BPI.
Right, and then strength of record.
Strength of record, another ESPN metric. They've been using it a lot in football, and now it's starting to catch up more in basketball, where they take the strength of schedule, which is similarly calculated in terms of looking at winning percentages only. So how hard your schedule is to win. And that's based on just prediction modeling. And then the strength of record is how you actually did against that tough schedule. So if your strength of schedule is tough and then you go 30-1, your strength of record, because of how difficult it is for you to make that record. Strength of schedule, how tough your schedule is. Strength of record, how well you did against your tough schedule.
Yep. And then there's also a couple other rules for seeding, right?
Mm-hmm. They tend to not like conferences to meet up early. It used to be an absolute rule that you couldn't meet until the Elite Eight if you were in the same conference. However, that has changed just because some conferences are now getting 7, 8, 9, 10. I think we had 11 teams from the ACC a couple years ago, but now they try to not have teams meet until at least the Sweet 16, which is what we experienced last year when we had to play Virginia Tech.
Right.
And then also the geographic. They want the teams that are higher seeded to not have to travel as much. And so that's why you may see a team jump up 1 or 2 spots on the S curve so that they're put in the appropriate region versus having to travel all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast. So again, just more subjectivity into the not perfect science that is bracketology.
All right. So basically, recap this thing. So
Yes.
we have And then there's worth doing some specific examples just really quick for Duke and one of the other teams that folks in chat really like as far as like where they land today. But to recap this thing, so you have your quadrants.
Yes.
Okay.
So the quadrants tell you how valuable that game is to your overall ranking, how tough that game is. Quadrants 1 through 4. 4 is bad, 1 is good. 2 is good. You don't want losses or in quadrant 3 or 4. That will negatively affect you versus a loss in 1 or 2. The net rankings, which is the NCAA evaluation tool, that's what ranks teams to determine the quadrants. And then that's the tool which factors in multiple different things of how you did. That's the tool the NCAA primarily uses when they're seeding you in for the NCAA tournament.
Right. And then you go from the net to the S curve, which is the actual seeding curve.
Yep, that's what the NCAA will release come Selection Sunday, 1 through 68. That's the S curve.
Includes more subjective metrics, we'll call them.
Yes, much more subjective metrics.
Like the eye test, injuries. Injuries was called out in chat specifically.
Yep. The streakiness of a team. Yeah. So if Baylor goes on a run, so they just lost yesterday. If they go on a run, beat Kansas and all these things, they're going to jump up onto the 1 line.
Yep.
For sure. Okay. Because they went on a streak right now. And so they will take those things into consideration.
Yep. All right. So where does Duke land?
So as of right now, Duke is net 6. That would put us on the 2 line. If you look at some of the bracketologists, they're projecting us as 3. Based on what we could do in the ACC tournament, so we're either going to get a quad 2 or quad 3 game for our first game, depending upon who wins. We don't know. So a quad 2 would be if NC State were to be who our opponent. If any of the other teams were our opponent, it's a quad 3. That quad 3 wouldn't help us. The quad 2 might. The big thing is when we then play potentially, if we win, potentially Florida State. That's a quad 1 game, and that could really help us out. Mm-hmm. If we beat them, we're playing another quad 1 if it's UVA or Louisville. Correct. So that's potentially 2 more quad 1 wins, which would give us much more quad 1 wins compared to some of the other teams like Dayton, San Diego State that are pretty firmly on the 2 line. So if we can get 2 quad 1 wins, I think we jump onto the 2 line for sure. I don't think with our resume and with a quad 3 loss against SF Austin, I don't think we're jumping to the 1 line. I think that's just the reality of the situation. So I think our best case scenario is a 2 seed. As of right now, we would be probably on the 3 line.
Wait, why are we a 3 if we're number 6?
That's where the subjectivity comes into it.
5 through 8 should be 2 seeds.
You would think. But the big thing is that SF Austin loss. I think not any other team within the top 10 have a quad 3 loss. And so that's a big loss. That's a very big loss. You have San Diego State. They have the one UNLV. Against you. They have the one against UNLV, but they were sitting on the 1 line, and they're only going to drop them to the 2 seed. They're not going to drop them too much.
All right, and how about?
Give me a team.
Kentucky.
Yeah, where are they at right now?
20.
They're 20th, I think. And again, if this were to end right now, as of right now, if you look just at the net ranking, 20 would be a 5 seed.
Something like that.
Yeah. I think they're going to sit. If they make a run, if they win the SEC tournament, they'll probably jump to a 3 seed. But right now, it seems like based on where they're at in the net, they're probably going to be at about a 4 seed. Probably a 4 seed. Because I expect them to get at least 1 or 2 more wins than the SEC tournament for sure.
It looks like they have opportunities against Auburn, Florida, which would be all quad 1. So let's say Tennessee in here that they just lost that game, but they had beat Tennessee before, and that's a quad. So that would be a quad. So they have opportunity.
They have opportunities to get more quad 1 wins, which
Yeah.
would help jump them. And their quad 1 record is good. 9-3 is great.
Yeah, it's really good.
The big thing with Kentucky is their quad 4 loss
Yeah, the one Evansville
against
one.
Evansville. That's
Yeah.
going to sink them. That's going to really sink them. And that's why they're probably not going to jump up higher than the 3 line, because no one else in, I think, the top 10, 15, 20 has a quad 4 loss.
What do you do with Florida State, the top of the ACC?
So right now, Joe Lenardi, I believe, has them on the 2 line. And I don't understand how they're not ranked higher than 10. This, again, is where the net, we just don't understand some of the intricacies of the net. To me, if Florida State, if they can get at least 1 or 2 wins, which of course we don't want them to win against us if we play them, knock on wood. But if they get 1 or 2 quad 1 wins in the ACC tournament, regardless of if they win, I still think this resume is much better than San Diego State's resume or Dayton's resume, in my honest opinion. Even you could say it's better than Gonzaga's to some extent. So they're probably going to be put on the 2 line, but if they make a run, they could be pushing for a 1 seed.
Yeah, I guess if they would also have to beat, well, us, and then
they'd have to beat us. Yeah, they'd have to beat us, which is why I don't want that to happen. Right. So they're going to be fighting for a 2 and a potential 1 seed. They have to make a run to get there, but their resume is very good. Their strength of record is strong. But again, I don't know why they're not higher. I really don't know.
Yeah, I just want to point out an interesting example about Florida State. If you look at it, because they played Clemson twice, I believe their loss to Clemson it's a quad 2 loss, but their win against Clemson is a quad 3 win.
Yep.
Which is kind of that weird,
it was that weird thing. Weird switch. So you can see how, as the season goes on, the tool is very volatile in some situations where it's out of your control what Clemson does the rest of the season. And if they just keep tanking and keep losing, well, that tough loss or that tough win that you got against a tough team. I mean, they obviously took us down when we did not play very well that game. But then you're negatively affected by that. And so they're negatively affected in 2 ways for Florida State, because their quad 1 win now, or their quad 1 loss is now a quad 2 loss, but their win was a quad 2 win, and now it's a quad 3 win as the season shifts. So you get almost like a double loss there.
Yeah, I guess the only thing UNC can take away from their season is that both of their losses to us dragged us down a little bit because they weren't good. So
exactly, they did not help us out. We should have gotten at least a quad 2 quad 2 wins this season from UNC, but it was a quad 2 and a quad 3. So again, the quad 3s don't really help you out that much.
Yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on this as we go into the conference tournaments, because anything can happen. I mean, we've already seen bids get stolen. So who ends up where exactly is not quite set in stone yet.
Nope.
But Justin, you're going to make your own bracket, and we will present it before the selection committee goes ahead and actually reveals it. So we'll see how well you can do as far as who gets in, who gets out, who gets left out, and to see, to what extent does the NCAA committee actually follow these net rankings or decide to change them, right? Because I think we had in chat, we were saying, well, Kentucky's probably a 2 seed. If you went, which may be true, if you went purely based on net, just numbers, top to bottom, it would not, right? Just like Duke would be a 2, but we're probably on the 3 line at the moment with an opportunity to move up. So there is absolutely some subjectivity that is going to come into play, and we'll see just how the extent of that subjectivity as we get closer into the tournament time. I mean, because it's a good call. You'd say, well, a team like Kentucky looks pretty good right now, but if you went just purely based on math, on the math, they're down at 5, but they'll probably end up higher than that, especially throughout the tournament here. But I think the Kansas is the runaway number 1, and there is no Like there's
no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Nothing that happens next week will change Kansas as the number one overall seed going into the tournament. With the strength of record as one, and the power index as one, and the net as one, and they just have too many. They've just been playing too well. They have too many wins, quality wins. So
100%.
Yeah, so congratulations to the Jayhawks, because not only did they win the Big 12 outright, they are also going to be the number one overall seed come next Sunday. All right, very good. So that is our segment. So hopefully now we've explained it. This incredibly complex and like nuts process. It's hard. It's not easy.
No. As I kept diving into this, I'm just like, oh my goodness, wait, what if this happens? What if this happens? And there's just so much. I think there's still so much the net doesn't capture, and I'm going to try to make that as visible as possible when I make my bracket next week, the bracket before they release their S-curve and their bracket, to try to really see how well teams are actually doing in each quadrant, what their actual quad one win average is. Are they beating up a bunch of 50 versus 75 teams, or are they actually beating top 25 teams that have a legit shot at a national title? And so it's going to be a challenge. I'm probably going to have to spend hours doing it, but it's going to be a fun challenge.
There you go. All right, let's switch back here for a second to a little less mathy portion of the segment and wrap this thing up. So this is the fun part. Eric, it is March. We have fans out here in chat who are, diehards for their teams. As I said yesterday on the broadcast, I sacrificed a stuffed ram on my balcony before the game to usher in the spirits, and I was quite superstitious. I also wore my jersey. I also slept in full Duke attire, which included socks and boxers.
Nice.
And then what else did I do? Oh, I prayed to my Coach K shrine. Before the game. So there's a lot of superstitions come March, and you've got a list here.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely touched on some of them, and we all have kind of our list. And I think it's more, the most important thing to remember about superstitions is that there's something that you can both prepare for, but it's also something you have to pay attention as the season goes on to discover and unlock new ones that you might not even realize are developing. It's little pattern recognition is in there. You got to know, especially when you're like, when I started out as a Duke student, right? Like, I happened to just dress up for the first game I went to, and I wore like a Hawaiian shirt, right? We won that game, and I was like, oh, I should probably wear the exact same thing next game. And it just kept rolling and rolling and rolling. Granted, we win a lot of games at home. But you know what? Hey, it was my shirt that was doing it, right? And then, it solidified it when I stupidly lent that shirt for somebody to go to a frat party, like rush event. And the guy did not do his own laundry. So he didn't have the shirt the day of the UNC game. And I went to go get it from him. It was like sent off to a laundry service. And we lost that year.
That was our freshman year.
And I was like, well, that solidifies it. We won all of our games pretty much except for the UNC game. So then the rest of the career, when I was like, I would wear that shirt, or when I got a little swole, sophomore, junior year, a little tight, I was wearing a jersey or painting up, I still had it, right under between my feet or whatever I was jumping on, so at least it was in the stadium, because it just evolves, right? And then, we lost a couple of games, and then I just found some other reason to blame it on something else, that my shirt, wasn't my shirt's fault, and then, once I graduated and I wasn't in the stadium anymore, it loses its power because it's not physically present in the stadium, but I took it with me when we went to the Final Four in 2010. So, brought it to, it works outside of Cameron, just has to be in the stadium, and it makes total logic sense. And then, eventually, there's a loss. You do everything that you think you did that should work, and somehow, they still lose. And the important thing is to then figure out one of two things. What did you forget to do? Or is there something else that when you win the next game that you actually just pick that one up and start running with that? You always got to be able to adjust on the fly. But yeah, lucky shirts, lucky clothes. It's tough because you always have a go-to. And I think that they, they can either be perpetually, you wear it every game for the entire time you're a Duke fan, or you got to ebb and flow with the season. This shirt works this season, pick a new one the next season. I don't know. Some people mid-game have a stack of 5 shirts right next to you to switch on every 5 minutes because this one's not working. Just got to be ready to go. Wear all 5 shirts at once, also acceptable. Whatever you need to do. You have to pay attention to what's working and adjust. And remember, the most important thing is that we're all doing our own part to contribute, right? We all have a little bit of an effect on this team. The other important part to remember is when they lose, it's not your fault. You actually didn't do anything to help that team. They're the ones out playing on the floor, So it's always this duality of superstition that you have to be able to reason with and accept. Just like do whatever insane thing that you think is working. And when your friends and family and loved ones hold an intervention and tell you to cut it out, listen to them because maybe you're going a little overboard and it's starting to affect the lives of others. The other important thing to remember is don't listen to anyone because what you're doing is helping Duke win. So
Yeah.
Idols are also great. I have a Coach K bobblehead, which I put in front of the TV. I like to turn him towards the game so that he can watch it to help out, real Coach K. I actually got it signed by Coach K, which boosted extra powers down the stretch. So it's like fully there. I remember back a couple of years ago when we had that one season where we played Syracuse twice and like both games ended at like last second shots with like questionable charge calls.
Yeah.
I actually created an anti-idol for Syracuse where I went and got an actual orange and carved like a sad face in it and then like had Coach K stand next to it. And then when we beat them, I just like smashed the orange with my bobblehead. So you got to use all these. I mean, shrines are good. Shrines are good. If you're sharing a closet space with a significant other, that could be a little bit of an issue. You got to give them some space too. Or if they have their own shrine, you can just combine shrines. Hashtag combine shrines. Get it trending. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the important thing. Always being able to recognize the duality and do that. A lot of people. Students, they paint up their bodies, paint up their faces when they go to games. Once you're an alumni, it can be a little trickier. It's kind of hard to go walking around town or go to a bar with your face painted up. But you can still wear some makeup, some subtle eyeshadow. Blue, that's what my girlfriend does. She has her go-to eyeshadow that she does.
Oh, that's right.
Also, some exercise-induced superstitions. Some people that are out of town, maybe where they're watching a game on TV and you're watching it. And you realize you're running on the treadmill when the game's happening. And faster you run, the better the team seems to do. Man, you got to keep running. If you
oh my God.
Great, keep the team going. But also, again, if they lose, then hey, I don't know, maybe another exercise in the gym is good for superstition purposes. So there's a wide range of things that are acceptable. But the important thing is to stay vigilant and keep realizing what is going to be the next lucky charm that you need to hold on to. The next a ritual that you need to do to keep our team going and being able to adjust and adapt because that's what our team is looking for and they need all of us and they don't need any of us. So I'll leave it on that note.
Oh my God. Go Duke.
Oh, that was great.
I like the gym one. If you're on I guess if the treadmill fails, try the rowing machine or the elliptical. Or the stair stepper. Work harder. Oh my goodness.
Oh Lordy.
All right, let's wrap this thing up. ACC tournament next week, ladies and gentlemen. The bobblehead one gets me all the time. I don't actually have a bobblehead. He's looking at the screen. Oh my goodness. Duke with the number 4 seed. Actually tied for second place, but gets the number 4 seed as a result of the tiebreakers. Potential play against Wake Forest, Pitt, NC State. Gentlemen, which one would you rather play and what is going to happen here?
You know what? Let's take on NC State. I think that would be for our net score and for our quad rankings, that would be the best game for us to get. Because then presumably we're going to have a very tough game against Florida State. So I would much rather us get that win against a quad 2 team than a quad 3. As much as I'd love to beat up on Wake Forest after our fiasco in Winston-Salem, let's get the max points out of this.
Yeah, and I agree. The points is also, I mean, a good point. But I also, because we had effectively split with NC State, and I would just love to beat them again, just to show that we beat them on the season. Kind of just walk away with that, so they can't say, well, like, oh, at least we tied Duke this season, and kind of have a thing, or like, oh, if we played you again. So
Yeah,
like
right.
I'm looking forward to getting to see them. But I think it'll be interesting if Capel and Pitt. I think they can take the Wake Forest team, and I think that they might be able to give NC State some competition. But if NC State's firing all cylinders, I think we'll end up seeing NC State.
Fran, which would you rather call?
I'd rather call the NC State game. I feel like when the matchups between both of us, they're a lot more competitive. They're really good. We've called already two of the other NC State games, so I feel like we got familiar with the players, and I would like to see that one again, to be honest with you, on a neutral floor as well.
Yeah, I'd actually like to go to play Wake Forest, because I feel like I have closure with NC State, but I don't have closure with Wake Forest after the disaster in Winston-Salem. Even though we have won a home and away, I just feel like to end on the loss is like kind of awkward. So I would like to see Wake, but anyway, I'm not sure if we're going to get it. The sad part about this is that we won't get to play UNC again unless they somehow make a run to the championship, in which case we would drub them again there. Potential matchup against Florida State. I mean, Duke and Florida State played for the ACC championship last season, so any of these top four teams is going to be a good game. Start Friday and Saturday. The game Thursday will be at 2:30 Eastern, 11:30 Pacific. We'll find a way to somehow call that somehow. I don't know. We'll figure it out. And then the Friday games, at least they will be at a decent hour for us, 7 o'clock or 9 o'clock, and then the championship on Saturday. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and with that, we will go ahead and wrap this thing up. We've covered a ton of ground to this morning between UNC, a couple tickets punched into the NCAA tournament. We talked about how the NCAA committee does seeding, and we ran through the superstitions, which apparently are make sure you have your favorite shirt, or 5. I haven't tried the switch shirts during the game if like one isn't working.
Oh no, I haven't.
But
no.
but I have like put a jersey on. Like if we were like really
like over
absolutely.
over your shirt.
Yeah. I'm like,
Absolutely.
all right, jersey's coming on. Like this thing is, yeah. I guess another one could be if you throw the jacket off.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a really good one.
Throwing your jacket off.
No, nobody wears a full suit during the game just to kind of dress like Coach K.
Unless they're the Mark Sturgeon fans from Maryland.
Oh yes.
Oh God. All right, and then so make sure you remember the bracket tournament and challenge is live. Invite your friends. The more people that participate, the bigger the prize pool. And those links are in the description of the video. All right. Anything else before we sign off? No. All right, we're good.
All set.
Have a good rest of your Sunday, everybody. Stay safe. Make sure to wash your hands. Wash your hands. Yes. And then with that, we'll see you on Thursday. All right, go Duke.
Go Duke.
There you guys go, Duke.